Now that you have modeled your strategy statements and your data and processes, with one click, you are able to publish your models to the portal site. Let's get started here and take a look at what the portal site does for us in so much as connecting to Trino and the underlying physical data sources. So we'll proceed by logging in to the portal. And once we log into the portal, we will be presented with a list of projects that we have been working on. In this case, I will scroll down to the Human Trafficking Live Demo project. And just a quick note, I can archive any one of my projects and I can share any one of my projects with anyone who happens to be on my project team. So we'll click into the Human Trafficking project and notice that there are three actions I can take. I can get insights into my project strategy. I can view and discuss the project strategy and the conceptual models. And I can run a data product from my project models. Let's take a look at the insights first. Immediately, I'm presented with the option of running a query or conducting a search. Had I not already connected my models to the underlying physical data, I would have had to do so by clicking on Connect. Here, I can map or remap my conceptual data to that of the physical data. So for example, if I click on details here, it will show me the mappings. It essentially gathered up a list of entities that are in my project. And if I click on any one of these entities that you see here, for example, Encounter, you will see which physical database and where that database lives. And you'll see which entities and attributes, in fact, have been mapped to that particular database. And here you can see the fact that we are using Galaxy Starburst as our managed data service. So in this case, the patient registration is connected to the data entities that we modeled for the patient. And the beauty of this is that you can map any entity to pretty much any physical data source. It's because of the power of Trino that we're able to aggregate data across multiple data sources when we go ahead and conduct our search against that data. So let's go back to search. And once we do, and we click into the search box, we're presented with the elements of what it is that we'd like to search for the project. In this case, we had set up different views for that project, in addition to different planning statements, and finally, the data entities themselves. We can start a query on a planning statement level, or we can go ahead and query a data entity directly, or we can go ahead and get an insight on our data. We'll do that first. So what we want to do is get the data that correlates the Green Bomb survey results to the Encounter and Emergency department. Click on that, and in a couple of seconds, Trino goes out and gets the data, aggregates the data based on our query, and returns the results back to us. And here you can see those results. So we see that there's been some notes and some evidence gathered during this emergency department visit. And we can see the list of patients who actually entered the emergency department and what the findings were of those patients. Now we can also go ahead and, if we want to zero in on one particular patient, we can do that. Immediately we get the results for Eileen Esposito. And Eileen Esposito is our example here because she is the one who is in fact diagnosed as a victim of human trafficking. And what we notice in the data is we notice that the notes are similar. We notice that The injury is similar in so much as where it was found on the body site. And there's some other information, of course, that goes along with the encounter. Now, if we want to understand this information a little better, we have at any point in time the option of clicking into the model views. When we click into the model views, we're presented with the conceptual data. So, for example, if we wanted to get a little better understanding of the query behind that insight that we just looked at, we can go up here and click into the insight folder and scroll down to that particular insight itself. Once we do, we're presented with the attributes that were involved in that particular query, and we are also presented with the SQL that was automatically generated for us that actually ran the query. We also can see different links that that query was linked to. And here's a link, for example, to the planning statement itself. And you can also cross-reference from this particular planning statement to other objects in our project model through which we have a connection, or with which I should say we have a connection. So here's the encounter entity. Now, along with this, we can cross-reference to an actual workflow. Here is the workflow in the emergency department. And what we found in our query was that most of the injury was in the same area of the body, it was pretty much behind the head, and there were bruises also found on her body. Well, what we can do with that information is we can incorporate and improve our process to be a little more agile. And what I mean by that is this: if you look at the current process here, you'll see that the Greenbaum survey isn't really an option until quite along in the emergency process. What we can do is put in a step in our business process notation here that if someone comes into the emergency room with bruises and an injury to the head, that we want to immediately conduct a Greenbaum survey, because it's more than likely than not that particular patient coming into the emergency room at that point in time is a victim of human trafficking. And that's the correlation that we found in our query results, I should say. So you can see how all of this just gels together for us, because we have the opportunity to connect our model or models, be it both data, process, and we connect those up to the planning statements, which is essentially our project strategy. And we saw what the project strategy is. We can look at that again. We want to go up here to our overview. You can see our planning statement hierarchy here, where we have the mission, the goal, the objectives, the strategy, and so on. And then connect everything down to the actual physical data so that we can pass that along to Trino. Trino will go out, aggregate the data, bring it back to us so that we can further analyze that data and get the kind of insight that we need. Finally, I'd like to just return back to our three options here. We saw the insights, we saw the model views, and now I'd just like to take a quick look at the data product. Now here in the data product, as you can see, we have the ability to go ahead and select any insight. So we'll select, for example, different insight here. And here's an insight that access the relative migration of where potential victims of human trafficking are migrating from. And in this case, you can see a description of the attributes that we will get back from the query. You'll see the actual SQL command that was automatically generated for us that will generate the view from which we'll get our data returned back from Trino. You'll see the actual physical database information of where the data reside. Again, Trino is able to aggregate this data across multiple data sources. So here you can see those different data sources. We have a country, sector, industries, region, industry sector, patient, and person. And then you get a quick glimpse of the data, somewhat data lineage. That is to say, the relationships across all the different entities and different views that comprise the data that we're being returned by Trino, and finally a preview of what that data looks like. So that ends my little demo here. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and we'll just move right on now to our recommendations. Thank you.